You're on film, mate.
There you
go.
Go for it.
Okay. So, next question. Are you finished?
I'm finished.
Next question. Anyone else? Stick your hand up. Come on. Somebody must have something to ask. Not one person. Adrian Killings has got a question.
If you were going to be stranded on a desert island and you're in a box, and you can take with you one Oliver twin and one
Dizzy game. Which Oliver twin has sort of the least time to live? And to be brutally honest, I've only ever played the first Dizzy game. Didn't like the way he moved across the screen. It just annoyed me. It was kind of not quite as annoying as that sort of bouncing pumpkin thing. What's Cauldron 1 and 2.
They were hard.
Yeah, they were rock hard. But no, I couldn't. I just
You've got to take one.
I've got to take one.
You can kill him.
It's a question about surviving by cannibalism. So the thing is, I actually don't know them one from the other. So it'd just be random. I just sort of like, and they might lie because they're so interchangeable. You know, if I said Philip, they might send Andrew instead because Andrew annoys me more. I don't know. I'd just have to say, just whichever one was willing to risk his neck being on a desert island with me and the first Dizzy. Yeah, which I would probably just use the case to start a fire to roast his boots. Yeah, you bastard.
So you've said on record many times that the industry these days as a whole is a terrible place to work, yeah? Here you still are.
Well, yeah. I think it is terrible because, well, it's wonderful in one way. Well, obviously it's terrible because so many new studios are starting. It doesn't make any sense so far. Stick with me. People are getting so badly burned working at AAA studios. People who have tenure probably as long as mine or Mr. Stevenson in the corner, well over 25 years. And they just think, do you know what? I'm fucking sick of making games still. And I'm sick of working on a franchise. Because I remember very, very vaguely, way back in the mistletoe, I went for an interview in London. And we are talking well over 30 years. And first of all, I bumped into some chap. The boss was showing me around and he said, oh, this is, I can't remember the guy's real name. He said, oh, this is Andy. Andrew, this is Simon. This guy said, call me Simon. Oh, there he was, long leather, sort of long rider's coat down to the floor, and the hat's on. And I thought, it's fucking, it's 25 degrees out there. Jesus Christ. And then I was talking to the artists, and they were working on John Madden. And I said, so, you've been here how long? This guy said, 5 years. So, work on John Madden every year. And he just looked at me and said, kill me now.
This was the interview.
Like I say, people, I've never worked in a AAA studio, unless you class Oceaners, they were AAA back in the day. Well, in my first stint with them, I got pissed off because I was just tired of working on 8-bit product. I categorically remember, we used to have a little sort of group huddle every morning. It was almost like the Hill Street Blues, and Gary would get everyone together and say, you know what you're doing today, Simon? Yeah, I'm doing strikes on such and such. You know what you're doing today? Yeah, I'm doing backgrounds. You know what you're doing today? I'm putting music in. And then he'd say, right, everybody go, everybody be safe out there. And off we go, scuttled. And I just put my hand up because I'd been talking to a friend of mine, Steve King. And I said, when our Ocean was going to move into 16-bit, Gary said, I categorically tell Ocean will not be doing 16-bit product anytime soon. And I just thought, before I do my sprites, I'll type up my resignation. And that was it. I was out by lunchtime, which was a kind of a good move and also kind of a bad move. It went horribly wrong. I ended up with a horrible litany of bonouts. The last one of which led me back into Ocean through the Total Recall fiasco. But yeah, it's, you work somewhere and you just think, especially at Ocean, it used to get frustrating. You'd go to Gary and you'd say, I've got an idea for a game. Well, so can you put it on hold because we'd like you to do an arcade conversion of this? Okay, so you put it on hold. Or if you will sit and listen. I mean, I went to him and all I wanted to do was an isometric game, like Nightmare. And I wanted to have ghosts and little monsters, and I wanted it to be cute. And he said, give it 10 minutes. And he was back and he said, we've got a license. Universal Monsters. It's 50 years. Yeah, I think it's 50 years of Universal Studios. So they were celebrating all their classic monsters, Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Mummy, Dracula, Werewolf. And then it just went horribly wrong. I mean, I don't know if anyone remembers Universal Monsters. It was in all the Amiga mags. It dragged on for a year and never got finished. Because they said, well, Universal don't want their characters to be small and cute. They want them to look like the characters, so I had to make them big. So I had to make the protagonist tall. So immediately I then had to use, instead of using one tile for a floor tile, I had to use like 6. And there just weren't enough tiles. There wasn't enough memory in the Amiga. And we could disk load. And they had this first timer coder, Mike Derbyshire, I think. Bless him. And God, he struggled. I mean, he really did all that. But by the time he finally threw the towel in, I'd moved on. I think I was 2 projects further down the line. But this is it. You work somewhere. I mean, I wouldn't want to be working on, we're going to do Assassin's Creed. I've got a friend, Amar, that I met in Strasbourg, and he now works over in Canada, and he's on his something like, I don't know, 4th version of Assassin's Creed, but he's a producer, so I suppose every game brings different challenges. But I know the other guys have got different challenges, but this time it's going to be a knight in armour, next time it's going to be a red Indian, and the next one's going to be a pirate. But basically it's still Assassin's Creed, So these guys tend to leave after a while. So do you know what? I'm going to set up on that. And so there's a lot of new tiny studios being made by people with years of talent, years and years of talent. And there's also a huge glut of studios being started by first timers. But I was talking to you earlier on, I think it was. Yeah, we were just talking about indie products. People say, Simon, why don't you do it? Well, some of the games that I've played, has anyone played Celeste? Yeah? Owlboy, anyone seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Owlboy took 11 years. Now, I can't find any evidence anywhere that proves they worked on it non-stop. But even, I think Celeste took 3. Yeah, when you look at some of the top indie games, and the minimum they're taking was 3 to 4 years. I don't know whether I've got 3 to 4 years left. So, yeah, you just get burned and you move on and hopefully you do something different.
Last question. Over the years, you've worked for many software companies. Where was the thing you favourite one you made for that's good.
Ocean was good at the start because it was fun. But after a while, working surrounded by all the screaming children, because I was considerably older than most of them. I just wanted to strangle most of them any given day of the week. It was, oh God, the egos and the divas. You know, people like getting to grips with their sexuality for the first time. Other idiots taking a glass eye out and putting it in your coffee. Oh, that's funny again for the 100th time. So yeah, it was.
Do they float?
No, they don't. They don't find it until they keep looking at it. Yeah. So yeah, so all that was. Ocean was fun at the start. Gary was a great boss to put up with way too much bullshit from me and others, but most of them. But the next one after that, I ended up working for a mobile game developer in Hamburg called Elquare. And that was just like the Ocean days again. It was just, you didn't know what you were going to do from one day to the next. And because the graphics were so small, you could get them done really, really quick. This was the infancy of mobile phone games. No one was doing polygons, it was all still pixels. So, you know, I actually worked on Defender of the Realm, is it? Similar? Yeah? I worked on that. I had to reduce the graphics down. So in the end, it didn't look like anything, but and I'm saying to the boss, it doesn't look, that's fine. That's fine, just leave it. You know. If someone's stupid enough to buy that phone and buy that game, serves them right. Yeah. But no, Elquare and Ocean, yeah. And I've lost count of these studios. It's, I mean, probably one a year. So I don't know, there's probably about, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and 30 studios. But if you take in freelance studios, there's infinitely more. Pro, that was a good one. Fergus McGovern, rest his soul. Fergus McGovern was a great guy, and I got good projects, and they cut me a lot of slack, and they pushed a lot of work my way. Yeah, they were good.
So, you mentioned earlier, Scott and myself, one of us may have said that he has quite outspoken views and opinions.
Yeah.
So, obviously, we give you free rein on the podcast.
Indeed.
And take little bits out of it from time to time, sometimes because I choose to. Sometimes because you say just take that out.
You see, I don't remember what it was that I said about Hitler. You said you should take Hitler comments. I have to go back and listen to it.
Yeah. So, your mouth over the years has got you in trouble. Do you ever get to a point where you think, oh, why did I say that?
No.
It's cost you work on occasion as well.
Yes.
So you never think, if only I could keep my mouth shut.
No. Because the thing is, 9 times out of 10, when I get into trouble, is because people ask me the most stupid question they can possibly ask. Simon, in your opinion, or can you tell me what you think of? You see, really, what they should have said is, Simon, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd like you to pander to me. And I'd like you to stroke my ego and tell me what you think I'd like to hear. But they never did. It's like, what do you think of these graphics? Shit. It's a bit harsh. Well, you did ask. You know, but I would say, you know, I wouldn't say if it wasn't true. And it's very rare that I've actually been that blunt. So 9 times out of 10, I'd say, oh, come on. But no, if people ask for my, I used to sort of pussyfoot around at the start. I think I vaguely remember that day. But after a while, yeah, it was a Wednesday. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I thought, what is the point? too short, because if you lie to someone, then you're going to have to undo that lies further down the line somewhere, because it to them. You just go, yeah. And then someone else will come to you, senior, and say, have you seen these graphics? They're fucking awful. Yeah. I want you to go and have a word with it. And you think, oh shit, I told you they were good. So you then got to undo the mess. So you just nip it in the bud. Do you like this? Nope. These pants make it look thin? Nope. Just if you don't want to know, and see, the thing is that I've been around long enough now that people know me. So go and ask. People know pretty much what kind of answer you're going to get. Did you like our game? And it's not always negative, because on my podcast before I started getting sort of salty about things, I used to spend an inordinate amount of time doing game reviews.
You did?
I did. But now the industry and the scene and all the fuckwits in there kind of got in the way, and they're throwing too much out. It's like shooting fish in a barrel, people say. People were contacting me 3 weeks ago saying, Simon, looks like your podcast is writing itself. Sometimes you have to address these issues, especially, for guys like you who are part of the scene. I don't talk so much about the industry. I did in the early ones. It was like how I got started in the industry, what my views are on the industry, and why I'm still here. But now it's mostly about the scene, and I'm just part of it now. Not a major part, but I'm just part of it, because you guys have been around much longer. You guys have loved these machines. Now, I walked away from the 8-bit machines, thought, I've never seen that again. Jesus Christ, I've lost count of the number of 8-bit machines I've seen. And it's brilliant. And all these guys, I went to Poland last year with Mr. Bagley to Pixelhead, and we're going again this year. And I was fascinated. These guys in Warsaw, their machine, I can't remember who I was telling today. The 64 kind of, here in England we had, the schoolyard wars between the two major ones and the poor old wannabe. I love the Amstrad, so I thought they were all, to me they were just like the Three Stooges, they were great, they worked really well together. But the 64 went from France all the way through to the border of Poland. And then once you hit Poland, it's the Specky. And that just blew my mind. And these guys said, Simon, you've got to remember, they said, we were behind the Iron Curtain until a few years ago. They said, people were smuggling in Spectrums. They said, they didn't have the box. They said, they didn't have the instructions or anything. They said, sometimes it was just a board. And we'd get these pirate tapes with like 25 games. Didn't know what, none of us could read English, so we didn't know what the instructions were saying. So they were like, I just thought it was amazing that these guys sat and pressed every key until things started working. And they're coding and they're writing games for the Spectrum. There's guys in Czechoslovakia and in Russia, especially the Russian guys. I was talking to one Russian guy and I said, well, maybe we could get the next into Russia. And he said, you are joking. He said, we couldn't afford to buy a new Spectrum, let alone a Spectrum next. Unless it goes for 3 potatoes and a chicken, So they're all working with machines that are held together with gaffer tape, chewing gum. And they're doing absolutely brilliant things. They really, really are. Even Jim, if Jim says he's impressed with someone else's coding, it's good. And Jim just says, oh yeah, some of the stuff coming out of the Eastern Bloc. It's just mind-blowing. So yeah, it's just being here and seeing you guys, being part of the scene. I don't give a shit if I get in trouble. Just don't invite me next time.
But they keep on inviting you.
They keep on inviting me, yeah. It's like the mafia, isn't it? No, it's just fun to be here. I think I'd say most of the shows I've been to, I've not participated. I've just been spectator.
You did a few ocean things when the book first came out.
Well, it's because of the whole sort of talk thing was kind of new. So it's like, who should we get? Ocean. So it's ocean this and ocean that. After a while, you just get sick and tired of saying the same things, and people get sick and tired of hearing the same things. So, an ocean really was just, to me, it was just a job. I remember the first time I said that, and it was Craig and Chris's first or second revival, I think it was. Yeah, the race course. And then, oh God, the number of faces that dropped around. They said, what was like working at Ocean? It's just a job. Well, well, it was at first, but after a while it was just hell on earth. And when they moved across Manchester, it just became corporate. It just wasn't Ocean. And all those people who say, wouldn't it be great if Ocean came back? No, it wouldn't, because it wouldn't be Ocean. Ocean was supposed to be finite. Ocean lasted longer than it should. It dragged. It had a prolonged and painful death. Well, until the French finally bought them out. They released a lot of sort of subpar titles, and the development teams were given far too much free rein. And we're going to do a game about steampunk on Mars. I can't even remember what that one was called, but they invented a name for the development team they called the Tribe. And then they all having their pictures taken out, Salford Keys, the Tribe. Certainly everyone at my need for Ocean, God, I didn't recognize a single face on that picture. Ocean died there. It deserves it. Had its time. It overstayed its welcome slightly. The bosses at the top didn't really give a shit about you guys. If you bought their games, that's all they were interested in. And they didn't give a shit whether
businessmen, they were game people.
No, they weren't. They had several run-ins with bankruptcy before. They tried many things: roller disco, car salesman, fruit and veg. The one they hated me reminded them of. They used to run a hippie clothes shop in the centre of Liverpool and have all these groovy guys and cool cats all sitting around, and cheesecloth shirts and their flares. No, it was called Cape. It was called Cape. It was just by Williamson Square in Liverpool, and neither of them liked me reminding them of it, especially John. So I stopped because John was leaving me.
So is there anyone from those Ocean days that you've not managed to track down that you'd like to be in touch with, or
Bruce Everett.
tracked everyone down that you want to?
I've kept in touch with those I wish to keep in touch with. Bill Harbison. I speak to Paul Hughes every now and again online. It'd be good to see him again. Steve Jolly Thompson. Always a pleasure to see Steve. Steve Wahid, Dawn Drake I saw at the Ocean book launch, and then I think the following year, the first Play Manchester, they had a kind of Ocean reunion. We dragged a lot of people back in, people who hadn't seen each other for 20 years. The rest of them couldn't give a toss. Mike Lamb, bless him. Mike Lamb was a lovely guy. Mike Lamb is now, what time is it in Jamaica right now? He's sunning himself in his purpose-built house in Jamaica. Now he's retired, incredibly wealthy. Mick West sold Neversoft for countless millions in his mid-30s, and has done whatever he wants ever since. But no, you never hear anything about rich artists. It's all rich coders, because they're clever ones, artists at 10 then. But No, I keep in touch. Every now and again, well, I wish Mr. Gracie happy birthday every year, did the last week. Every now and again he'll pop in and say something on Facebook chat. He was quite surprised to see me play Blackpool several years ago. Because the last time he'd seen me, he was giving me notice to leave the building. And he thought I was going to hit him then. He thought I was going to hit him at Blackpool. And I just told him straight. I've gone on record countless times on the podcast. I've never borne any more towards Gary. Gary was, like I say, long-suffering Gary Gracie. Put up with me far more than he should have. I painted the ceiling of his... Well, it wasn't just me, but I was the instigator. We were all shotgunning beer, and it ended up on Gary's ceiling in his office. I mean, he's still out there, he'll never notice, he's in London. But he came back the next day and his office smelled like a brewery. So, you know, you just Simon!
So you've never hit him or threatened to hit him, but you did once put somebody against the wall.
Colin Stokes, yeah, Colin Stokes, he was a fucking waste of space. Yeah, I hated him with a passion. Because he was just a salesman, was he a salesman? Yeah, he was a salesman. And he didn't give a shit what he was selling. He could have been selling radiators or gas fires or... The fact that it was computer games, there was no passion in it. And it was the cocaine and whores era in the 80s. And Colin was only too happy to come in and get all us poor monkeys in the dungeon. Oh, there it was. In Stringfellows last night. Oh, cocaine, oh, blah, 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 you know. All this kind of bullshit. You know, not exactly that kind of stuff, but he'd just come in and just sort of talk down to you. And I was fucking older than him. I think, by a year, or roughly the same age. And he humiliated me there was a Christmas party at the Britannia, I think, and he was with some clients. And I just wanted to have a word with him about, that was it, I wanted to go, I wanted to leave. And I just said, can you tell, what's his name, we're going? And he just decided to, sorry, Master, and all these other suits thought that was hilarious. So I just said, have a word with you. And so when he came into reception, I just lifted him by his throat. And I thought I was going to get the sack, but I looked into John Woodson and said, good one. Because nobody really liked him. Yeah. And my, you know, he was incredibly rich for a while, or he was richer than that, but not incredibly rich. He was well paid, but he ended his days as a security guard at Asda.
Any audience questions? Yes.
Of all the games you've worked on, which has been the one that you thought had the most potential, and then probably the same game, what was the biggest disappointment?
Biggest disappointment? I think Universal Monsters, because I had high hopes for that being. I really wanted to take on Ultimate, and I knew that we had the coders. I wasn't just talking about my own pixel skills, I wanted to get other people in. I wanted to do a really, really cool game. And Universal Monsters appeared. And I had to kind of go through the motions every single day and pretend that I was keen. I knew it wasn't going to happen. I just knew. Because within literally sort of no time at all, the coder said, well, Jesus, if the sprites are all like 32 pixels high, we can't have more than like 2 of them on screen at once, or that kind of stuff. Oh Christ, I haven't got that many tiles. You know, because I said, I want sort of a maze or a garden, I want a haunted house, I want the dungeons, and I want this level and that level, which we could have done if everything had been cuddly and cute and small. But now they like cut my legs from underneath me, and so just went in every day and Universal Monsters. I mean, there were little parts of it that were fun. Getting some of the things animated, they were cool. You know, when you for a pixel pusher, when you get to the end of animation, especially if it's something you've never done before, and I've never done isometric animation before, and it's an absolute pain in the ass. I mean, it really, really is. When you do 2D, it's easy because you just animate one arm and one leg, and then you just put them out to sync. You know, there you go. You've got 6, 8, 12 frame animation, whatever. You can't do that with isometric. You have to draw each limb. You can't flip the left arm to make it look like a right arm when the camera's 3/4 top down, looking isometric. So that was my greatest disappointment at the time. The one, everyone's had me say this, Adam's Family. That was the most fun because I was just told, I was dragged in because the game Gary didn't realise how big the game was until the pixel artist Warren sort of said, I want to do this, and Gary went, wow! And he was really excited because basically Super Mario, which was the SNES one, Super Mario World? Yeah. So Warren said, right, I want to take that on. I want to challenge that for entertainment value. And I think he was reasonably successful. They're two completely different games, but I think he came very close. He would have come even closer if one of the games conferences hadn't come along and Gary walked in and said, right, we need the game finished next week. So it was literally, there's 3 more levels to do, we haven't even started. So they got taken out. They ended up somewhere in Huxley's Scavenger, the sequel. Well, no, being told Carl Blanche, Simon just draws squeaky shit. And I was like, yeah, this is great, I just couldn't wait. I literally, sort of skipped into work on Mondays and stayed and didn't go home until Friday. I'd sleep on the desk. And I had small children. Every time I got home, the kids were bigger. No, that was funny. It was joy, absolute joy. And it's so rare to be able to say that. I've had good experiences on a lot of games, but nothing like that. It was magical.
Do you feel connected to a game like that though? Because you do the artwork and then you're 3 projects ahead and they're still doing the code and the game's not out yet. So do you not feel a disconnect from that game?
No, not at all. You keep popping back in and seeing how they're doing. And Jamie was such a good coder that it wasn't that long after we finished the graphics. I think Jamie had done so many platform games. James did. It was just a walk in the park. Getting to grips with the snares didn't pose any real problems for him. I don't remember him sort of scratching his head and having to phone up Nintendo and say, how do you do this? Jamie was a great coder. Warren did a brilliant job on sprites, backgrounds, the design. Just kept tweaking things. So I don't know how long after I'd finished. I don't remember being sort of 2 games ahead. I might have been sitting sort of fiddling around, just doing a few hits, helping out with bitmaps and things on something. Well, no, there was no disconnect, and it's fun. I think I actually saw it in the main room. Earlier on.
You'll always see it places like this. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We've got a few minutes left before we need to finish it. The late Mr. Ray.
Here's the question we've all been waiting for.
I have a couple, Mr. Butler.
Go on.
Okay, first one. Any thoughts on writing your memoir?
No.
Why?
I get into trouble.
You get into trouble anyway.
No, I mean I really get legal trouble.
You could write it to be published on the day of your death. Not that I'm invoking that. So you want to get into trouble then? You want to?
No. I mean, did you write all your fantasy books to be published on the day? No, you wrote them to make some money.
Yeah, well, my fucking wife took it all. Ex-wife, sorry.
No. I'd have to change too many names and then people wouldn't make the connection.
Okay.
You know, you'd have to say, oh well, you know, it's not like the Goldbergs and saying, oh, it was June 1980, blah, blah, blah. You know, you'd have to say, well, there I was in Ocean talking to, and you'd have to say so people would know. And then you'd have to tell the...
But you're very open and, you know, opinionated, and I think it would be a fabulous read.
No, I have considered doing my career in pixels.
Well, like a series of images.
Yeah, just a series of images with just a little bit of text underneath, just saying, you know, and in 19 blah blah, I moved to, or I got my first job in Imagine, you know, and I met the waste of skin that was Bruce Everest.
Oh, you just stole my next question.
You're going to have to find another waste of skin then, aren't you?
Okay, word association.
Yeah.
I'll hit you with some names.
No, you won't.
Yeah, I will.
Or Chris.
Bruce.
Bruce Everest.
No, I didn't say Bruce. Bruce.
Bruce. You've lost me.
Alright, so I hit you with a name. You tell me what you think.
Oh, Bruce.
Bruce.
Toss.
Got it?
Yeah, that's it.
Alright, okay.
What was the word somebody asked you for earlier?
Yeah, strangely enough, I was contacted by Mr. Lee Fogarty of Vega Plus Infamy. Yeah, I just got this strange message saying, Simon, I'm just listening to your current podcast. I would like to know, are the words you use to describe person A copyrighted? My particular favourite was Wank Spangle. And he then, so I just said nothing, but then he contacted me again and said, is it 2 words? Oh no, fuck Bunyan. Is it 1 or 2 words? So I replied, hyphenated.
When you prepare for the podcast, you have a whiteboard full of insults.
I don't prepare. The only way I prepare is I make a cup of tea. Make sure the cat's not in. He does have a tendency to annoy me and sort of dig his claws in the leg, want to go out. Make sure the house is empty of the rest of the family. And then I just turn the mic on and just stream of consciousness.
Break down the wall a bit, Simon. Where do you do it? In the house? What inspires you? What day? What time?
Well, it's usually the very last day of the deadline. Usually up against it. And I think, oh, fucking hell, I put this off. I've got nothing to watch. Oh, Christ, what? And I just turn the mic on and just stop talking.
This one's been different though, hasn't it?
This one's been different. Yeah, this one, as people suggested, has written itself. I mean, there are things I could not tell you in the podcast. There are things that should never be said. But you're obviously pushing on this one, aren't you?
No.
Go on. So I got one on that. So obviously this podcast, a lot of negativity type vibes to it. What positives do you think have come out of recent events?
Recent events? Right. Well, we have to go online, on record here and say what we're talking about, don't we?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the Kieran Horgan fiasco. Hands up here, anyone who doesn't know who he is?
Really?
You don't know who he is.
You'd be surprised what I don't know.
I don't know about that.
Simon, shall I switch off?
No,
No.
not at all.
I'll run anything past you. Yeah.
Well, I've done the bloody pod.
I'm not heard it yet though.
What am I going to say? Oh, it's somebody doing an impersonation. That's the kind of stroke that he pulls. Well, you all know that Kieran has, like, for the last 15 years, sort of sent out his tentacles throughout the community and tried to disparage anyone and everyone who he feels has somehow maligned him. Maligned the genius that is Kieran Horgan. He has...
Wrote out a book that didn't involve him.
Yeah, I mean, he has self-worth that is just off the scale. I can only suggest, I have suggested on my podcast and I'll suggest here, I can only suggest he has sociopathic tendencies because he will not accept irrefutable proof when it is shown to him. He thinks he is the expert on anything and everything community related. And anyone who dares to disagree with him suffers his wrath, not just once, but forever. People who have never met him, who have put something online and said something, God help you if you ever go online and say anything about the Jaguar. Because he'll hunt you down. He'll find your email address, you'll start getting all kinds of trash in your email. He'll go on his Twitter page and he'll use any or all of his sock puppet accounts to disparage you. And then, when called out, doubles down, backtracks, plays the mental health card. I'm autistic. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? That is not a get out of jail card. Terribly sorry, Your Honour. I didn't mean to shoot that school bus full of toddlers. The voices in my head told me to do it. I mean, that's his excuse. That is his fucking excuse for everything. And it is not acceptable. He is not acceptable. He brings nothing positive to the table. Now, I've said it's ironic that, I sit on my podcast slagging people off. Who slag people off. But I'm saying it so that they'll go away. And all that will be left is positivity. Because that's all that people want to. People just want to come here and have a good time. People don't want him walking around pissing people off. But he said some terrible things. He caused the Octavius kitten fiasco over Horace. He told Octavius, it's Sarah, Octavia's kitten, he told her that Chris Wilkins had called her a slut and a slag. She was just tits online. And when she asked him to prove it, he couldn't, obviously, because it was just a lie. He called her a cunt. Now, that is my favourite Anglo-Saxon word, and I use it for a woman, but I would never use it for a woman. Never. But he actually sent her a tweet, a private message, either on Twitter or an email, and he said, stop. She's put it on the Atari Age forum. Stop playing the mental health cards, you useless cunt. And you just think, you don't deserve to draw breath. Fucking waste of atoms. I mean, he really is. He's a waste of space. He's got nothing to contribute to this scene. And I hope he's got has finished his journalistic career, at least in the UK. If he wants to swear, then let him. I mean, I called him out in the podcast. I said, come live on my next podcast. Or pick a date. Pick a location. Mike will come, do the sound. We'll get Andy to film it, but bring irrefutable proof. I will show you all the questions that I'm going to ask you, all the accusations that have been levelled at you. You bring irrefutable proof to disprove every one of those accusations, please. Because he says he can. He says we are all liars. He says we are all conspiring against him. He thinks there's an evil cabal, some kind of Illuminati plotting against him, plotting his downfall. And I hope that's true. And I hope it happens before 5 o'clock. I really do. I hope his career is over. He's just a lying, snivelling little piece of shit. Yes, you are, Kieran. On that note,
What's in the future for Mr. Butler?
in the future, flying cars and dancing dogs living together. I have no idea. In the future, I hope to have a few more games under my belt. It just depends. Like, I don't know how long, I think I said on my first podcast that it's undeniable I've got more days behind me than I have ahead. So how many of them are going to be physically productive? I don't know. As many as possible, I hope. So there you go. I hope to be around for quite a while, and I hope to do some more games for you guys.
And we want to buy them and play them. Thank you for coming, everyone. Would you please join me in thanking our
Thank you so much.
esteemed